Hello, everyone, and welcome to a webinar that we're having together between Fresh Portugal and Holborn Assets. Fresh Portugal is a tax advisory and a law firm dealing with everything having to do with representing expats in Portugal. Holborn Assets is a European-wide, and Jacob will introduce it better than me, but when he starts talking, but it's a Europe-wide financial advisory helping people find ways to invest their money. And this one's about all sorts of ways to invest in a tax efficient way within Portugal. And if you feel like it, you can head over to the chat and say where you're from and say hi. We have that quite frequently on our webinars. This time we're hosted on Holborn, so the interface is slightly different, but it's Zoom, so surely you all know that by now. And yeah, I think with that, since we have a lot to cover, we're not going to bore you with too much details about us, and we're just going to move straight to Jacob to talk to you about tax efficient, mainly unit links, right, Jacob?
That's correct. Yes, some unit linked investment bonds, and so yeah, thank you, Zeev. Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to you all. Absolutely delighted to have you join me today for this deep dive into the world of tax efficient investments for Portuguese residents. I'm Jacob Shelton. I have the privilege of serving as a senior wealth manager for over a decade, guiding individuals just like you through the intricate maze of international finance. Please bear with me today as I do have a little bit of COVID, but I will be pushing through it as I think this is valuable information to you all. Now, you may be wondering, what's so important about tax efficient investments? Well, for a moment, imagine that you're planning a trip from Lisbon to Porto. You have two routes. One is a straight, smooth highway, while the other is a winding, pothole-filled road. Both will get you there, but one journey will be far more efficient and enjoyable. And that's exactly what we're talking about today, finding that smooth, efficient route for your money to grow without unnecessary bumps and detours caused by excessive taxation. Now, let's take this analogy a step further. Imagine that on this journey, you're carrying precious cargo, your hard-earned wealth. Every pothole you hit, every unnecessary detour you take, chips away at this cargo. That's what inefficient tax strategies do to your wealth. They erode it bit by bit until you arrive at your destination with significantly less than you started with. On the other hand, a tax efficient strategy is like having a state-of-the-art suspension system on your vehicle. It doesn't just make the journey smoother, it actively protects your precious cargo from the bumps in the road. And in the world of finance, those bumps can be significant. Over the next 20 or so minutes, we're going to embark on a journey together that will explore how you, as a resident of this beautiful country of Portugal, can make your money work smarter, not harder. We'll uncover investment strategies that not only promise growth, but do so in the most tax efficient manner possible. We'll delve into the intricacies of the Portuguese tax system, understand how it applies to different types of investments. We'll explore the power of compounding returns while you're not consistently losing a chunk to taxes. And we'll take a look at how strategic tax planning can dramatically accelerate your path to financial freedom. So fasten your seatbelts and let's set off on this financial adventure. At the end of our journey today, combined with our next two speakers, you'll have a roadmap to navigate the Portuguese investment landscape, armed with knowledge to make your money grow while keeping more of it in your pocket. Let's begin. Before we dive into specific investment strategies, it's crucial that we understand the lay of the land, Portuguese tax system. Think of this as our financial GPS, helping us navigate the terrain of investments and returns. In Portugal, as in many countries, different types of income are taxed at different rates. Let's break it down a little bit. Employment income is taxed at progressive rates, ranging from 14.5% to 48%. It's like a staircase. The more you earn, the higher up the staircase you go, and the more tax you pay. Capital gains, interest, and dividend income is what's most important for investors. Most of this income in Portugal is taxed at a flat rate of 28%, like a flat toll road. No matter how much you gain, you pay the same rate.
Sorry,
And then rental
can I
income.
just check? We're on the agenda slide here.
Oh, yeah, we're still getting introduced a little bit here, Jonathan. But yeah, we can certainly jump into the investment side a little bit more with NHR, which is really the key to unlocking significant tax savings in Portugal. Think of this as a VIP pass in the world of taxation. If you qualify for NHR status, you can enjoy significant tax benefits for a period of up to 10 years. This includes a flat 20% rate on employment and self-employment income from high value added activities, and potential tax exemptions on foreign sourced income, including pensions, dividends, interest, and rental income under certain conditions. But remember, NHR regime is not a get out of tax free card. It's a complex system with specific rules and requirements. It's like having access to a special lane on the highway. It can get you there faster, but you need to know exactly how to use it. While you're under NHR, you should consider selling your high growth assets like properties, stocks, or companies. Under NHR, you might be able to realize these gains with minimal or no tax. And plan ahead. NHR status is a 10-year countdown clock. Don't let it expire while you're holding on to assets that you could have sold more tax efficiently. But what happens when the NHR party is over? Don't worry, we've got a plan for that too. You'll need to start your post-NHR investment planning well in advance. It's like preparing for a weather change. You want to be ready before the storm hits. Now, you might be thinking, this all sounds great, but how do I actually use this information to my advantage? That's exactly what we're going to explore next. We're going to look at specific investment vehicles and strategies that can help you navigate this tax landscape in the most efficient way possible. Now that you've got a basic understanding of Portuguese tax landscape in general, let's dive into one of the most powerful tools in your tax-efficient investment vehicle arsenal, life insurance investment bonds. These bonds, known as in Portuguese financial terminology as ICAE, are like a fine wine. They get better with age. But more than that, they're like a chameleon in the world of taxation, adapting to provide you with the most favorable treatment possible for non-NHR Portuguese tax residents or for current NHR residents planning for future after their NHR status. Let's break down how these bonds work from a tax perspective. If you hold onto these bonds for 5 years or less, you're still looking at a 28% tax rate on all of your gains. This is the same as the standard rate for capital gains or interest income. So normal so far. But if you hold on to them for more than 5 years, but less than 8 years, all of a sudden something magical happens. You're paying only the 28% on 80% of those gains in that investment bond. In real terms, that's an effective tax rate of 22.4% only on those gains and not on your original principal. Now, this is where it gets really exciting. If you have the patience to hold on to these bonds for more than 8 years, you're only paying tax on 40% of your gains. This brings your effective tax rate down to a mere 11.2% on those gains. Now, just to put some real numbers to this, just to show how powerful this can be, imagine you have a portfolio worth $300,000. Over 8 years, it grows by an impressive 50%, reaching $450,000. You decide that it's time to treat yourself and withdraw 12,000 euros of that as income. This is where some of the magic happens. 8,000 of that withdrawal is considered a return of your original principal into your investment. It's getting your own money back, not a cent of tax to pay. The remaining 4,000 is your profit. And yes, it's taxable, but remember that amazing 11.2% effective rate we talked about? That means you're only paying 448 euros in taxes. Now, let's compare that to a regular investment tax at 28%. You'd be looking at a tax bill of 1,120, which is more than double. In our example, the total effective tax rate on your withdrawal comes to just 3.7%. But wait, there's more. These bonds aren't just tax efficient, they're also incredibly flexible. You can switch between underlying investments without triggering a taxable event. It's like being able to change lanes on the highway without having to pay a toll each time. Now, let's take this a step further and consider how these bonds interact with NHR status we discussed earlier. If you have NHR status, you might be able to receive incomes from these bonds completely tax-free as long as they're held outside of Portugal. It's like finding a secret tunnel that bypasses all the toll roads. But remember, with great power comes great responsibility. These bonds are powerful tools, but they need to be used correctly. The specific tax treatment can depend on factors like how you withdraw the money and how the bond is structured. It's crucial to work with a knowledgeable advisor who can help you navigate these complexities. Also keep in mind that while tax benefits are significant, they shouldn't be the only factor in your investment decisions. You still need to consider the underlying investments, the fees involved, and how they fit into your overall financial plan. Lastly, it's important to note that tax laws can and do change. While these bonds offer significant advantages now, always be prepared to adapt your strategy if the rules of the game change. In the world of tax-efficient investing in Portugal, life insurance investment bonds are like your secret weapon. Used correctly, they can dramatically reduce your tax burden and accelerate your wealth growth. But like any powerful tool, they need to be handled with care and expertise. Now that we've explored some of the exciting investment options, let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture, your overall financial plan. Think of this as your financial GPS, guiding you through some of the twists and turns of the market towards your ultimate destination, financial freedom. Let's consider, when do you actually need access to your investments? It's like planning your pit stop along a long road trip. Are you investing for a short-term goal, like buying a house in the next few years? Or are you in it for the long haul, planning for retirement decades down the line? How much income are you really hoping to draw from your investments? Think of this as your financial fuel efficiency. Are you looking for investments that provide regular income, like rental properties or dividend-paying stocks? Or are you more focused on long-term capital appreciation? What's your risk tolerance? This is your financial seatbelt. Are you comfortable with the ups and downs of the stock market? Or do you prefer the relative stability of bonds or real estate? And then what are the current market conditions? This is like checking the weather forecast before a trip. Right now, we're seeing very interesting trends in the global economy. Interest rates are lowering, presents both challenges and opportunities. The US economy is on a whole new route after this week's election. And who knows what might happen geopolitically around the globe. So remember, financial planning isn't just a one-time event. It's an ongoing process, like regular maintenance on your car. Markets change, laws change, and your personal circumstances change. So it's crucial to work with a financial advisor who can help you navigate these changes, keep your financial engine running smoothly. With that, I will go ahead and pass it back to Zeev to introduce our next speaker.
Well, thank you very much, Jacob, and staying on time and even faster. So very well done on that, and super interesting comments about unit-linked policies. Now, there are other tax-efficient ways to invest in Portugal, and these will be covered by Daniel and Luis. I haven't actually introduced everyone properly, so shame on me. But I think, Jacob, you've introduced yourself very well, and Jonathan there, I don't know if you want to say a few words about yourself. Maybe you should, and then I'll say something about Daniel and Luis.
Real quick in that case. So hi everyone, my name is Jonathan Ralph. You might have seen me on a previous webinar that Zev and I did a couple of months back now. I'm a partner at Holborn Assets. I work very closely with Jacob. I won't be speaking today, but I'm here for a bit of support, and hopefully we're going to get a bunch of questions as well at the end, so you might see me then. But apart from that, I'm going to keep myself quiet and pass back to the guys at Fresh.
Thank you. Actually, Daniel is the head of real estate at Fresh. He's a very experienced real estate lawyer, and he will be speaking next. And after him, Luis, who is actually not in Fresh, but is a funds expert and the best one I know. So I invited him as a guest to this webinar. He's also a tax lawyer, but he works for a different firm, and he will be speaking about fund investments, also a very efficient tax vehicle to invest in Portugal. But first, Daniel. So Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Zev, for the presentation and the remaining ones. I'm going to try to share here my presentation. So, are you seeing it well?
You need to click the how do you call it?
Yes.
Okay, that's it.
No, it's correct. So, I'll speak a little bit briefly about the process of buying or purchasing a real estate in Portugal and some tax aspects regarding it. And it's very important to understand that real estate attached with a tax optimization, a good tax strategy, sometimes with NHR can give a lot of benefits, especially when it's inside the company. But first of all, let's do a presentation. I belong to Fresh team. I take care of real estate matters here at Fresh, and I'll start explaining how it works, the process of buying a property in Portugal. So Portugal, as you all must know, it's a small country. It's 5 to 6 hours from north to south, but it's completely different country in cultural terms, if you can say it like this. So the first decision is understanding what we want to achieve, where is the house that we want to buy, where do we want to invest, what we want to get with our money. So first step, coming to Portugal, understanding how Portugal works, what are the desirable places to put our money, because it's our money that is in stake. First thing, come here, certify that you're correct. Second stage, I don't know, I believe you're all aware, in Portugal, there are some documents that we are obligated to have when we sell a property. These are mainly the property certificate for tax registrations. We have the records for property from the state government state. We have energetic certificate, which is very important, and licenses for habitation or for commercial use. One very important thing to all understand, a correct due diligence, it's very important to make previously to establishing a deal. Why? For example, here now in Portugal, for the past year, it's possible to buy a property without having habitational license or commercial license, but it's legal. If you ask me if you should do it, it depends on the risk that you want to take, because if now it's possible and if it doesn't change a lot the price, maybe in the future it will not be possible, and for sure the price on your property will get down. This is the step also that is very important to understand, that if you are able to get a bank mortgage to buy a property. If you need it, you need to understand there are certain requirements that need to be fulfilled to get a mortgage. Inside the company, you need to have an history. Otherwise, if you create a company for it, it will be the partners that will answer for the mortgage that the company will have, in terms of not the liability, but the insurance that the bank wants to have regarding it. If you want to do it in your personal sphere, you'll have to present tax returns and sufficient funds and incomes to get a mortgage. After understanding all the steps and do the correct diligence, we go to the next step. Normally, what we do, it's a promissory contract. In the promissory contract, and it's very important because this differs a lot from other countries, you give normally a down payment to the seller. The down payment, it's subject to negotiation, but normally goes from 5-10% up to 20%. But here in Portugal, we don't use escrow accounts. So you transfer directly the money to the seller. So we need to understand who the seller is, we need to study it, and we need to try to have the less risk possible. How can we do it? The best option, the best solution is to give real effectiveness to the contract, or to register the promissory contract in the property records. This is the time also that you establish the terms with your bank, and you get the final the approval for the mortgage if you need. The last step, it's the deed. It's the day of the deed, where you go to normally to a notary, and you pass the property to your name or your company's name, your assets. This is the day also that you give that you have the records and the confirmation of the registration of the property. This is the standard way to buy a property in Portugal. When we buy a property in Portugal, we need to understand that there are taxes that need to be paid. We have two taxes. One of them, it's called EMT, property acquisition tax. The other one, it's the stamp tax. The stamp tax, it's a fixed value from the deed price, and it's 0.8% 0.8% from the price established in the deed. The other tax, property, and we are speaking about second homes, investment purposes, investment homes. It differs from value to value. It has very many stage, as you can see. So it goes from 1 to 8%, but normally it's around 6% what you would pay by the end. There is a slight difference between the mainland. That was the one that I presented previously in Madeira and Açores. In Madeira and Açores, the values are different. The values from the brackets, from the stage of the tax that needs to be paid regarding EMT. In stamp duty tax, it's the same, 0.8%. Regarding benefits and some exemptions that we have here today. Since last August, for under 35, there are many good exemptions. Under 35, people will not pay property acquisition tax or stamp tax as long as they fulfill certain requirements. And those are to be tax residents independently of the nationality. They cannot be dependents. Of course, they need to be under 35. They cannot have other property in Portugal, even if they receive it in an inheritance or if they bought the land some years ago in the past years, and the houses can only go up to 648,000 euros. This exemption, it's not for the total of the 648,000 euros, but it's for the first 324,000. If you do your accounts, this 324,000 euros will give you more or less 13 to 14K in exemption. This is amazing opportunity now, and it's available since August. There's something that you need to know. This exemption will only work if the house is for your own habitational use, and you cannot sell it or rent it for the first 6 years. Of course, you can ask me, oh, and if I have an offer from another country to live there or to work there, as long as you communicate it to tax authorities, and for example, in this case of work, if it's more than 100 kilometers from this home you bought, the state will not reclaim the taxes back. You will keep the money for yourself. You need to understand that also we have another tax here in Portugal. It's the IMI. It's the annual property tax. This tax, it's between 0.3 and 0.45%. It depends on the councils where the asset is located. Normally, it's 0.3%. There's also IMI. IMI, it's additional tax for high standard homes. It's a value that goes over this 0.3%, and it's for houses for more than 1 million, and individuals it's between 0.7 and 1.5%, and in companies 0.4% for the tax value of the property. Whoever is thinking in investing in AL licenses, now is the time. For the last year, you all are aware for sure that the old government changed the law regarding AL licenses and canceled the authorization for new AL licenses. But the new government changed this and it's actually from 1 November, it's giving licenses again. This depends on the councils. The councils can use or no this possibility, but I believe that many of them will use. For the past year, almost all councils nearby the sea area in Portugal were not allowed to have new licenses. From now on, they could do regulations internally that would give new AL license, new short-term rental license. The licenses are also transferable again. So in the past year, whenever you bought a house that already had an AL license, you will not be able to get it for you. Now you can still get it again, which is an amazing opportunity. A big question is to understand if we want to buy as an individuals and or as a corporate. This depends a lot on the idea that you have. We must understand that in individual, you don't have in Portugal a lot of deductions that you can do. But if you buy in a corporate, you could do a lot of deductions. For example, the mortgage, you could deduct some tax, and other situations like, for example, depreciations that you could depreciate inside the company, a real estate asset. 4%, you can have a 4% depreciation for 25 years. So this is subject to your consideration, but is also much more easy if you want to get a mortgage to buy it as individual. In the corporate, it's much more difficult. For example, you just have mortgage inside companies for 15 years. Regarding when you invest in terms of in short-term rental as individual, you need to be aware that if you are not over 200K, you'll only be taxed for 35% of your income. All your remaining income, the 65%, the state will understand that there is costs. So you will put just 35% of this income in your IRS, your income tax. Regarding corporate taxes are also different in Portugal. In mainland, for the first 17K, it's 17%. For the remain, it's 21%. Actually, this will change right now in the new budget, and it will change to 20% in the mainland, and the government expects to reduce it until 16% in the next 3 years. Let's see what they can do. In Madeira and the Açores, the tax efficiency, it's even bigger. And for the first 50K, it's 11.7%. For the remain of your income, it's 14%. Of course, that when you want to take the dividends from your company, you'll need to pay 28%. Now, this step, I think it's for Zev. I don't know if you want to stop.
No, so if you don't mind, Daniel, to pass a few slides for me, it's just 5 minutes for me. We're going to start raising the bar in terms of more sophisticated structures. The most efficient structure to invest in real estate by far is through funds, which Luis is going to talk about. But I'm going to, if you're not in a fund size type investment, if you're a retail investor, you still have options outside the fund space, and I'm going to very, very shortly touch on that. Really, just 5 minutes from me. So yeah, if you can move to the next slide.
Sorry.
Yeah. So you touched on holding through a company, paying corporation tax, and taking the money home, and then you pay 28% when you extract the dividends. One structure that's quite commonly used is to have a holding company on top of the Portuguese company. So the Portuguese company is not owned directly by the individual. The Portuguese company is owned by a UK company, and then the UK company is the one owned by the individuals. And this is a structure that, if implemented correctly, gets rid of the dividend taxation. Because the UK has two very exciting features. One is that it doesn't tax income coming from a country where it's already been taxed in almost every case, and the other one is that it also doesn't withhold tax on dividends paid out. But since it has the right to withhold tax under the double taxation treaty with Portugal, NHR people, this is all for NHR holders, they don't need to pay tax on distribution coming. The caveat to this structure is that it doesn't actually work if the UK company is a mere holding company that has no activity apart from holding the Portuguese company. That structure will be seen through, and the Portuguese tax authorities can and will ignore it. And therefore, if you implement it, you need to do something in the UK as well, and that is a small arrow called substance. But if you are careful and you implement this structure in line with commercial reality in a proper way, you can use that to get rid of dividend taxation. So for people that are anyway investing in the UK, for example, that is a very good structure. So let's move to the next one. Another kind of interesting option, if you like investing in short-term rentals, we've seen that as an individual, you have very low tax, but you can't use the expenses. And as a company, you can use the expenses, but you have a high tax. And the part of the answer could be in holding more than one asset and trying to chuck in as many expenses as you can to a company whilst benefiting from the low taxation of assets in your individual capacity. Again, this needs to be implemented very carefully. I mean, you can't just randomly put all the expenses under the company. It needs to make sense. It needs to be in line with commercial reality. But implemented correctly, it could achieve a very exciting outcome. Let's move to the next one. Yeah, and perhaps a point really worth considering. People don't like to buy real estate as part of a group normally. Most people, they like to buy their own asset, but that's something that people need to very carefully think about, because buying in a group can have huge advantages. And the most extreme version of that is the ability to use funds. But also, if you're starting with corporate structures and you're considering bigger type investments, pulling together resources gives you access to these options. And again, Luis is going to touch on funds and how they can be used. But we understand that some of the issue has to is related to building trust between people that don't necessarily know each other, and the real estate market tends to be pretty conservative. But part of what we're doing and planning to do in Fresh is bringing people together for that purpose. And yeah, if we go on to the next slide, it might be the last one. So yeah, so we've been sort of playing around with the idea of launching a Fresh Investors Club for quite some time now. We've started, there's lots of people very interested in investing in Portugal in all kinds of ways. And we're finally, now that the NHR is coming to an end, and we've doubled in size, we're finally having the resources to put it all together. And that is our plan. So we intend to relaunch the Fresh Investors Club and start bringing people together for all sorts of investments. And that includes giving people personal advice, which we've always done. So we have an investment consultation to find the assets that you like and how you want to go about your investment strategy. Part of that is working with partners such as Jacob and Jonathan, and part of it is working with our real estate department or with Luis and so on. But it's also about bringing people together. And if you would like to have more details, we will, if we send you a kind of a normal email after this webinar, just let us know that you're interested, and as this takes shape, we will discuss it with you and tell you exactly what we're planning. So that's all from me. I think Daniel, if you close your screen, then Luis can open his. Luis is a very experienced tax lawyer. He has a private equity background and compliance background as well, and he's by far the person that knows most about funds in Portugal. So over to you, Luis.
Thank you, Zev, for your very kind words, and thank you all for having me here. Apart from what Zev has already told you, I just wanted to point out that as Zev said, I am a fund experienced lawyer. I've worked with funds for the past 9 years of my career. I have a career of 16 years in tax law. I worked in one of the major continental Europe firms for a couple of years, and then I went into a bank as an in-house, and then I was legal and compliance officer, and now I'm an independent attorney again. And what I bring to you is picking up a bit on the analogy that Jacob made about the bumps in the road, or how to make them disappear, and also on the sophistication that you may opt to choose in Portugal when investing. So, as Daniel and Zay have already pointed out, in Portugal you can either buy assets or real estate assets directly or indirectly. The issue here is, how are they going to be taxed? And that also extends from my experience to other types of assets. And I've seen a trend of international investors coming to Portugal to live and then wanting to set up their own businesses, or they have investment ideas. They have early retirements with golden parachutes and they want to apply their money. And sometimes having a company or a normal company or doing that directly may not be the best answer. And so that's what I'm here to present. So I've called this the hidden treasure for EU-based investments, because Portugal is pretty much in terms of legal background and legal landscape, it's pretty much a direct competitor of Luxembourg or Ireland. It's just not as well known. We've had a bit of instability in the past few years, but now we have an amicable government. We have a great tax landscape and a great legal framework that will do wonders for your investments, so that the bumps in the road become less and less evident. I would say that the main issues or the main aspects of our tax and legal landscape, the first one would be the streamlined bureaucracy. So in Portugal, it's one of the most advanced jurisdictions in the European Union in terms of what you can do online. So doing things remotely helps a lot when you have international investors, when you have people in several parts of the world, and everything can come together via email, via Zoom, or via digital signatures, and then you can form a company online based on that. And that is very, very, I've seen when dealing with other EU investors, it's very efficient and very desirable when you want to set up something quickly, maybe before you even move to Portugal, because when you want to have something going on when you come here. The second one is the international legal landscape. Portugal is obviously a part of the European Union. We've implemented all the major directives in terms of tax, in terms of funds, the RGPD. And so if you're familiar with any other EU jurisdiction, you can have it here with the great food, the great people, and the sun. We have a very comprehensive double tax treaty network with 79 signed tax treaties and 78 in force. We were actually the first country to have a tax treaty with Angola. So we're not the country with the most tax treaties, but it's been a concerted effort regardless of governments, which is a great thing. And the company forms are very simplified. We basically use two: the limited company, which is for smaller types of investments, not subject to annual audits, leaner and more flexible structure. If you need something more complex, if you need to be able to accommodate new investors, then you have the SA, which is an anonymous society. So this basically means that the shareholders are not known except for when consulting the company's own book shares, book registry of shares. And then we have the tax opportunities that we can explore. As I said, we have the integration of all international aspects and standards in terms of tax. We have domestic legislation that allows for additional benefits on capital gains, on interests. And we have recent amendments to fund legislation that provide further opportunities. And I'll go into those in a bit more detail now, so that you can see what I actually mean. So we have here, I've created this this persona, Mr. A, who is a non-resident investor with certain wealth, and he wants a tax-efficient vehicle to do some investments in Portugal. He's moving, he's retired, he's happy, but he wants to keep his money moving. So, and he has a very diversified investment objective. So he wants to do some private equity and venture capital. You may want to invest in an opco, and he has some listed securities. This is the basic scenario where you would just use a regular Portuguese holding company to do that. So the subsidiaries or the portfolios under the company would basically be subject to standard 21 now, 20% next year tax rate. Dividends distributed to the holding company would not be subject to taxation if and only if those meet the participation exemption requirements, which is more than 10% of the capital or voting rights and more than 1 year of holding period. And then you have the listed stock portfolio, which is, to put it bluntly, very inefficient, whether you hold it through a holding company or directly, because the taxation is the same regardless of the structure. You might have a bit more efficiency in the company because you're taxed at 21%, but that efficiency goes away once you need to distribute that to the shareholder. Then on the shareholders, we have a standard 28% tax rate if they're resident, or the reduced double tax-free rate if they're non-resident. And so now we have Mr. A very unhappy with the first setup that he was presented with, and he wants to explore other opportunities, other types of structures that may be a bit more complex, a bit more sophisticated, a bit more expensive, but in the end, they pay themselves out because the tax regime is just way more efficient. And that's when collective investment schemes come into play. So collective investment schemes is just a very fancy terminology for funds. So these are funds that can operate under several different legal forms, which I'll show you how can be a great advantage when setting up these investments. So here we have the basic 3 types of funds that you can incorporate in Portugal or implement in Portugal. So we have funds that are specifically designed for private equity or venture capital, and we call them risk capital funds. Okay. And I apologize if I use funds and companies interchangeably, but this is a recent amendment in legislation. And so it still causes a bit of terminology confusion. But anyway, these types of vehicles, of CISs, are tailored, as I mentioned, for private equity type of investments. Their portfolio needs to be at least 2/3 invested in private equity type of investments. We're talking about majority shareholdings on companies that can be developed, that have a huge potential for development, and there is no restriction whatsoever in the type of companies you can invest. You can invest at the same time in a shoe factory, in real estate, in a real estate company, or in a restaurant chain. So in terms of investment portfolio, it's very, very flexible, very permissible. The main benefit of this type of vehicles is that the CIS, be it under fund form or corporate form, is not subject to tax. So it can make all the capital gains it wants, all the dividends, all the interests. It pays 0 tax at fund level. And then upon distribution, there is a cap of 10% when distributed directly to individuals, be them resident or non-resident. Which means that we've come from taxation at holding level plus taxation at distribution level of 20 plus 28 to a total of 10% effective taxation. Then you have real estate funds. Real estate funds are obviously directed towards people who want, as Zev briefly mentioned, to invest as a club. And so you have a couple of friends, you find a great piece of land, you have a plan to develop that, to make a few villas, even for either for yourself or to sell or to rent out. Real estate funds offer a full exemption on capital gains derived from real estate investments and on rental income obtained by the fund. So again, you have 0 taxation at the fund level with a twist. and this is a bit of a technical detail, but it's very relevant. The funds are not, these funds, real estate funds, they do not benefit from a full-fledged exemption. They are subject to corporate income tax, but they have an exemption solely on capital gains, rental income, and dividend income. This means that for any tax jurisdiction that is located abroad, if you want to welcome foreign investors, they will be eligible for double tax treaties. And so they are a normal company subject to normal tax, just has these very, very targeted exemptions. And then we have the security. So many of you are probably familiar with the terminology of UCITS, undertakings for collective investment in transferable securities. These are your mutual funds, those that you buy over the counter. But these can also be used for investors that want to take a bit more risk, employ a bit more leverage. And so you can have your portfolio there of your listed stocks, all your blue chips, all your NASDAQs, all your participations where you have less than 10%. You can have them on a security CIS. And again, zero tax at fund level. On distribution, you have the following scenarios. I've mentioned the risk capital funds. Those are capped at 10% for individuals. Real estate funds, when distributed to non-residents, are capped at 10% as well. So no more tax to pay in Portugal. Security CISs are exempt even on distribution to foreign investors. And so you can have a very, very tax efficient way to structure your investments before you come to Portugal. And then upon coming to Portugal, these investments are taxed at 28%, the real estate and the security CISs. But again, the fund is an opaque structure. So it creates a buffer between you and your portfolio, meaning that you only pay tax upon redemption. You don't need to pay tax every year, so it's not transparent. You don't need to impute the income to your personal level and pay tax on everything that the fund generates, regardless of distribution. And then we have some common trades, these funds. Some of them I've covered, maybe if not all. So all of them can be set up in either contractual form, so in the fund format, or in a corporate form. If you want to set up the fund in a corporate form, there's a great advantage on this, which is if you identify a target asset that is already under a corporate structure, say a piece of land that is already owned by a company, you can convert that company into a CIS without any taxation. So you have a normal company with real estate assets in there. You want to develop that, but you don't want to pay a huge amount of taxes when you sell the property after development. You can convert the company into a CIS and then benefit from the tax exemption. Same thing with security CISs. So if you identify a company that has a lot of participations in other companies that do not benefit from participation exemption, you can convert that holding company into a CIS with zero taxation. Also, and this is a huge advantage for Portuguese funds, that I don't think it's very used in either Luxembourg or Ireland. They can be self-managed. So again, if you have a couple of friends who are also moving to Portugal, all of you have long-term expertise in the area of investments you want to pursue, you can create a fund that is self-managed. This means that the owners of the fund can be the directors of the fund, and that saves a lot of money in management fees. So you don't need an external management company. You can save that, keep it all in-house, and your investment return grows higher. The other main amendment that was operated recently is that funds are no longer subject to authorization by the regulator of Portugal. They're subject to communication. So, and this is pretty much in line with what I've seen in my career with both the CSSF, with the FCA and other jurisdictions. So previously what you had was you had to prepare all the fund documentation, you submit it to the CMPM, which is the Portuguese equivalent to the SEC, and then they would have to actually look into the file, see that everything was correct, and then they would issue an authorization for you to operate the fund. That is no longer. Now they put all the responsibility on you, and you are the one who prepares all the documentation, and then you just have to communicate to them. And then if there's something they want to amend, they will do that posthumously. So after you have the fund operating. This is obviously a great advantage that needs to be that is ripe for exploration by non-resident individuals or international investors coming to Portugal. Because I remember in the Brexit days, I was working with a UK manager. They thought about coming to Portugal. We had a streamlined procedure, but it still took 4 to 6 months. Now it takes 4 to 5 weeks. So it's very streamlined. Everything is online. You just need to pick the right advisor to guide you through this path, so that you know that you have the right documentation in place, and that the CMVM is never going to bother you with anything that's missing. The final point is that there are no geographical restrictions on the permitted investments. So if you have a portfolio of assets that you want to combine in a single holding company, you can do that tax-free, and then you can have it as a fund operating in Portugal and severely reduce your tax liability. And that's it for me. Thank you all very much for listening. And I believe contacts will be shared after the webinar for these issues.
Luis, thank you very much. So I don't know if you were aware, but your sound was kind of like weak at times. So I hope people picked it up because it was super interesting. I think the biggest takeaways is that a fund can be self-managed, so it's not very expensive. A real estate fund, only 10% for foreign owners of the fund, and 0% tax on capital gains and rental income and capital income for everybody. It's incredibly efficient. So if you buy a building with a few friends and do it up, and each of you invests 200 or 300K, and together you have a 2 million investment, you may now want to consider a fund because it's so efficient if you're going to be selling the outcomes. And VCs also, and I mean, all of these structures are fantastic. And I think people always think, oh, funds, you have to have 10 million invested, but you don't. It's relevant from a much lower amount. Obviously, the more money, the more efficient they are. But they're very efficient from the kind of the low millions type investments. And yeah, I mean, that's just part of why it's Fresh. We're planning to pull people together. I think we can work with you guys, Jacob and Jonathan, on this to reduce the management fees. So I think that's quite a lot from us. There's lots and lots of questions. I think maybe we'll give like 10 to 15 minutes to try and answer some of them. Are you guys happy with that?
Sure.
Yeah. I think, one is to Daniel. Daniel, you're muted. So I think that's actually probably my fault, but you didn't have in your presentation the long-term taxation for rental properties. But if you can very quickly go through that.
Yeah, we need to be quick. Okay, so for long-term rentals, it's pretty simple. If it is a commercial property, you'll pay 28%. I'm speaking personally. When the investment, it's personal, not in corporate. So you'll pay 28% for commercial. For residential use, you'll pay 25% for contracts until 5 years. 5 to 10, you'll pay 15%. 10 to 20, you'll pay 10%. More than 20, you'll pay 5%. In corporate, if it is in a corporate structure, you'll pay according the corporate brackets.
Thank you very much. The next one, I think, is probably for me in the first.
I just want to say one thing. This percentage that I said, it's not like in a short-term rental in AL that you just choose part of the income. It's from the gross income, the 100% of the income.
Cool. Yeah. So next one, in the first sophisticated alternative, do you need a Portuguese code to hold the asset, or can Portuguese property be held directly by, in this case, a UK company? I'm happy to take this one. I've seen Portuguese property held by foreign vehicles. That is a horrible, horrible idea. Because if you don't pay corporation tax in Portugal, you need to pay something else. So you will end up paying for the rental, for example. So you'll pay 28% for the rental, and then you'll pay corporation tax in the UK for the same income. So assets in Portugal, if they're not held individually, they absolutely need to be held by Portuguese vehicle. And it's even worse if you try blacklisted jurisdictions in the mix. So it's Portuguese companies is the short and right answer. But money from the Portuguese company to the holding company should travel tax-free in most cases. Depends on where the holding company is, but under Portuguese law, in most places where there's a double taxation treaty and information sharing, the money goes up without tax after a year of holding. So it's not really a problem to hold it with the Portuguese entity. But yeah, I mean, we've seen clients doing LLCs, US LLCs, to hold assets, and the results are just horrendous. We're untidying one of those right now. Next one, there is a question of US tax implications on Portuguese. Well, group real estate is not really a problem, but insurance products, Jacob, they don't work. The ones you're selling, they don't work, do they?
Yeah, typically those unit-linked investment trusts or the insurance investment trusts simply don't accept U.S. citizens, and so it's a part of the reporting back to the U.S. government that the funds simply don't want to use, as well as the double taxation agreement isn't really relevant to these trusts, and so there's really no purpose for a U.S. citizen to use them. You lose all of the benefits.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that this has been forefront of our interest in the last few months, and we do have a solution for this, and that is why we wanted specifically to limit this webinar to non-Americans, because we knew that this is a good solution for non-Americans. Americans need something else. But yeah, do follow us and our webinars, because we do have other options, and we will talk about them in a webinar specifically for Americans.
If I can also just jump in and add my 2 cents in this particular case, talking to an American. Hi, welcome along, glad to have you with us. Do check out the PFIC, the PFIC regulations, just to understand your taxation obligations on, well, PFIC is Passive Foreign Investment Company, so any international investment as a US linked person may come under the scope of those particular set of taxation regs. Be very careful, and I would always suggest, as an American citizen, you might want to seek advice on that before you go into any major investment.
The cost PFIX that Jonathan is talking about for just the tax reporting costs can be completely prohibitive of any type of investment.
And we see we have to handle PFICs when we do golden visa stuff, for example. But if you don't have to do it, you normally just stay away from it, right? Yeah. So a bit about NHR 2.0, the popular name for the new tax scheme for that is tied to certain more limited set of professions, startup investments, startup involvement, or the islands. So that's in the law book, but it doesn't work because there's no regulation. Luis will tell you that you can still do it, but just manually, the old-fashioned way, and apply manually. But I have heard for those of you who are waiting for this to kick in, I have spoken to an assistant to the finance minister recently. We're members of the same investors group, and he told me that they want to see the budget passing, and then they will deal with that. So that they are planning to regulate it. It's coming. We just have to, typical Portuguese space. We have to wait, but it is coming. It's not been forgotten. I don't know, Luis, do you have any additional information beyond that?
No, I'm in the same stage as you.
Next one, another tax question, which I'm happy to answer. Process of golden visa, and have done biometrics a year ago, but haven't yet received the actual visa living abroad. Would you be able to get NHR? If you race to Portugal, so you have started an immigration process before 2024, I assume. If you race to Portugal now and manage to become a tax resident, and we have a lot of people in this position that are scrambling for tax residency, and I think Jonathan will remember that we've been exactly in the same place just a year ago. It can be resolved. No guarantees at this point because it's the end of the year, but it can be resolved if you're willing to race to Portugal and move very fast. We are able to help quite a lot of people still. Wait another couple of weeks or 3 weeks, it will no longer be possible.
If I might add as well, so I'm working with Fresh on this particular webinar. We've collaborated on a few webinars in the past, but I tend to specialize more in the golden visa domain. So some of you may have seen me in other channels talking extensively about the Portugal golden visa. It's where I focus a lot of my time, whereas Jacob picks up a lot of wealth management. A lot of my clients are in a very similar boat, and a lot of them have had very conflicting advice from other law firms in this particular space about how to get NHR as a current non-resident golden visa applicant, and that's led them down some very deep and complicated rabbit holes, whereas the team at Fresh have been very, very good at resolving that. I would strongly recommend, if you're in that particular situation, booking an urgent consultation with Fresh. Zev, I know that is, music to your ears. I try not to be so so much of a creep, but I do genuinely recommend the team at Fresh. They will sort you out. So if that's an urgent thing and you are able to come to Portugal, speak to them, set up a call.
Do keep going. It is music.
I can't do anymore because I'm going to need a shower after that.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. I think this one is for Louis. Can you hold securities in a Cayman fund, in a securities fund?
Yes, you can. There's no geographical restriction on that. You just cannot hold the fund when you're living in Cayman. So you cannot be you can be an investor. You're just going to be subject to 35% withholding tax on the income. I hope my sound is going through now, but I'm also typing answers in the Q&A section so that people don't miss what I want to say. And maybe if I can add, I've seen a lot of questions here on the recommended size of the funds, what type of structures you can hold. So funds are collective investment schemes. So they are by design for more than one investor. So you can have a fund with one investor if it's upon inception and you say to the CMVM, I only have one commitment. And they will, they don't approve it, they just have the documentation. But in the long term, you will not be able to keep that going because they will give you a notice to say, this is a collective investment vehicle. You cannot have only one investor. And another question was, the security CISs only work for non-residents. Well, the risk capital CISs can also be a very efficient way, depending on the type of assets in the portfolio. This would have to be analyzed case by case. And last but not least, picking up on Zev's comment on the size of the funds. For reference, the only fund with the minimum capital requirement, the only fund type with the minimum capital requirement in Portugal is risk capital funds with 1 million minimum. And you can operate them financially efficiently with 1 million if you're self-managed or even externally managed. Other types of funds have no minimum requirements. So they have to be SAs before they're authorized or they're communicated. And SAs have a minimum capital requirement of 50,000 euros. And so I would say that that's the minimum. Then it depends on the type of investments you're going to do, because funds may be self-managed, but they are still funds or companies. They may be self-managed, but they are still regulated. And so that comes with certain costs. I would say that bare minimum, bare bones would be 30K a year, all in, with auditors, with compliance, with accounting. And so you should have this in mind before jumping into a fund. But if you have 1 million euros to invest, it starts making sense.
Great. So some questions here on sophisticated Portugal held by other things structures. One question is about substance. How much substance do you need in the UK to justify a UK company holding? There's no one answer to this. It needs to make commercial sense, and that is what a court will look at. That is what the tax authorities would look at. So it needs to be substantive enough to make sense. But we have to remember that having a holding company, holding companies outside of its jurisdiction and holding other companies is a common structure. There's nothing wrong with it. It's only wrong if it's a pure tax play. So if you have a company, for example, that invests in real estate in the UK and also invests in real estate in Portugal, it'll be very hard to say that this company is a mere sham, or there's nothing in it, even if it only has one director was based in the UK. But yeah, generally the more the merrier, and there's no one answer. Yeah, there's a question, another interesting question, Luis, on getting the money from a fund. Would it be taxed as income? Or should we simply create an Irish company, put your funds there, pay 12.5% corporation tax, and then pay dividends, which are tax-free under the NHR? So I guess the first part of the answer is that you do need substance in Ireland. Otherwise, this would on any audit, this would break. So you can't simply create. Well, you can simply create an Irish company, but it won't simply work if it's audited. And the other half is yours, Luis.
Yes. So bear in mind that just picking up a bit on Zev's comment, substance is also a cost. And so if you have a Portuguese fund that is tax exempt, and again, for resident investors, it would make sense to have a risk capital fund. This will depend on the deal portfolio. But incorporating an Irish company and having 12.5% and then 0% as NHR implies also that you comply with residents, with substance. And substance is going to be a bigger and bigger issue because Anti-Tax Avoidance Directive 3 is right around the corner, and it will require countries to start reporting non-companies with lack of substance. And so this will get more and more expensive every year. So, I mean, it does make sense in very broad strokes of tax painting. But then when you look at the details, which is where the devil is, it may have actually become more expensive and even more detectable from a tax standpoint, because if you have money in Ireland and you're living in Portugal, you're going to be subject to CRS. If you have a company in Portugal or a fund in Portugal, there's no CRS to report. You're already here. So there are several details like this that you need to take into account.
Yeah, so fund is pure direct holding is fund is both simple and completely vanilla. It's not aggressive at all. It just needs to be big enough. Yeah, I mean, guys, do you want to take any other? I mean, I'll take another one on NHR, and then if you guys want to take any other question that you see that's within your space of expertise, please say so. But yeah, there's a question of applying for NHR 1 now or and waiting for NHR 2, and staying abroad, so yeah, I mean, none of that works. NHR is a scheme, and the new one are schemes for tax residents. You have to come and become a tax resident. If you declare that you're a tax resident and then you go away and you're no longer a tax resident, I mean, that's fine if enough time has passed and there was a reason for you to come and go. But if you come on a Monday, become a tax resident, and leave on a Tuesday, then you clearly have never intended to become a tax resident, and you're not one. So in the worst case scenario, you've made some false declarations there, And then, but if you do come to become a tax resident and you receive NHR, then you can't have access to the next scheme. It's either this or that. So you either take your chances with the new scheme when it's regulated, or you come to Portugal now, become a tax resident, and apply for NHR. There's really no real hack around that. Anyone, guys? Anything else that you want to pick up?
I'll jump in. The new law impact personal investments in capital markets in Portugal. As far as the unit linked trusts that I was speaking of, which are going to be some of the more tax efficient ways to invest in capital markets, while they're not held within Portugal, you can still have global direct access to capital markets. That's really going to be the best way to invest, whether NHR or not. And so, especially for long term, as we're looking over a long-term investment and a period of either 5 or 8 years, with each of those tax advantages, that's really going to be what we would focus on more.
We hope to see you. I think all of us hope to see you on our next respective webinars. So thank you guys.
Boa noite.
Bye.
Bye.